Did you know that this generation has a highest suicide rate, highest depression rate, and it desperately needs the help of those in the church? Well, in this podcast, we're going to talk about Generation Z. If you didn't know what generation I'm talking about, and I'm here with my brother Sam Picaro, which is also our youth pastor at the church I attend, and he's going to give us some information and talk about some statistics on Gen Z and then some keys on how we could help them as a body of Christ. So, Sam,
Hmm.
what are your thoughts first on Gen Z and how we see them suffering? You know, they have the highest depression, highest suicide rates. Why do you think that is? But what do you think, we could do as a body, especially as a youth minister?
Yeah,
How could we reach this next generation?
yeah. I think there's like a few things and few like topics we can hit on, but I think the first thing is this didn't just like randomly come. Like when people kind of think like, oh, why is this generation so lost in their faith? Why are they so suicide, anxiety, depression? Why are all these things? I think it really starts. And we could talk about this for 45 minutes, but I think it really starts with if we just look at like the Christian family, like what that looks like having both mother and father in the picture, like that has gradually gone down. So I think this is more of a reaction. This isn't like a the root itself. I think it's a reaction to the root, which is we've kind of broken up the family dynamic of what it should be, which again is something that again as us as youth leaders, as youth pastors, as people that work with youth, like we can't really fix that issue. We can talk with the parents. That is something that like now we are coming with students that are like, hey, my parent, I've never known my dad. Like, I can't fix that, right? I can't make that happen and rewind time. But there are some things that we can do that can at least give some of those images in the Christian world that can help with that. So,
Okay, so you're saying that Gen Z, a lot of them come from broken families or
mm-hmm,
divorced families, or the father is probably not in the picture as
mm-hmm,
much, and it's an effect of those issues that it's hard for people in the church or youth pastors to really fix that.
yeah,
But there's certain things we can do.
yeah,
So why don't you give us some of the statistics you shared with
yeah.
me? I thought it was mind blowing, so that people could hear the statistics to like what this generation is going through, and what's going on with
Yeah, I
them.
think this one is again. This one is really sad, but it also just shows us like we need to be looking at this stuff to know the reality. In 2021, there were about 2,900 suicides in youth ages 10 to 19. Like I just think of me as a 10-year-old. What is that like? What grade is 10 years old?
Fifth.
Fifth grade. Fifth grade are like they have been brought to a place. And again, social media does this a lot too. Like I didn't even know what like anything was in fifth grade. I was just playing basketball with my friends. Like I was being a kid as a kid should be. These kids are on social media, and even if they're not, even if parents like take them all off social media and whatever, their friends are still seeing it. The friends are still talking about it. So it is a reality that we just have to face of like, man, these kids are learning stuff way sooner than a lot of other things. So their mental is just not ready to hold these things. So when you have a 10-year-old, first off, knowing what suicide is and let alone thinking about it and doing it is wild. So I
Yeah.
think that is a huge thing from 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th grade. Like, man, I didn't even I was just a kid. Like I
Yeah.
was a kid and got to be a kid, and these kids are forced to grow up with the climate that we're in.
Yeah, and I mean, I came from the hood, and there could have been multiple reasons why I could have got depressed in that.
Yeah,
But even at 10 years old, I don't even think I really realized what was going on.
yeah,
Like
exactly.
it was when I got older, I really realized everything that was happening in my family, and things of that nature were kind of like started thinking about it more. But 10 years old, I mean, that to me is devastating. But
Yeah,
I believe, and I might be wrong, but I believe that, like you mentioned, social media and all these things that they're exposed to, I feel we were never exposed to. I think that plays a role in it,
yeah,
because how else do we explain it?
yeah,
I feel like it's unexplainable besides social media.
yeah. And I
So,
think it also is like I got to learn some of those key things that a kid learns about through the eyes of my parents. Like we weren't the family that just had like the talk, everyone just has like the sex talk, right? Like
mm,
you have this talk and it's all the birds and the bees or whatever. I had a conversation with my parents that was gradual where it wasn't just one time, here's everything. It was, hey, you're ready for this. Here's this. When you're young and you can just hear, hey, mom and daddy love each other. Like, oh, okay, so that I can put in my head in a biblical scope, like, okay, these two, there's a different type of love between them two and like me and my friend. And I can just see that. And then the next stage is, hey, well, there's da-da-da-da. And you can see it in a way that is normal. These kids see it in the most corrupt and gross way through porn, through all these different things that like it was never meant to be explained that way. And they're seeing the worst case of that, right? And that's what they're learning. So that is their like, okay, so that is what sex is. That's what lust is. That's what these things, and they're not learning it through like the biblical scope of like, hey, here's how like God actually intended this to look as a beautiful thing, and they're seeing the misconstrued, corruptive version as what they're learning this is. You know?
Yeah, so it's like a max exposure to things that we've never been exposed to.
And it's not, and it's the way that it's that, and it's so much, and it's just in a way that like cannot be controlled. It's like chaos.
It's unhealthy, right? Like I look at it like they're exposed to things in an unhealthy way.
Yeah.
That kind of puts them in a position to experience a lot of these things. But the next thing I want to go to is how much of this do you think is demonic, right? Because when we're in certain situations or positions at a young age, or even when we're older, some of these things can allow the enemy, the devil, to come in and just, wreak havoc on these young kids' lives. And I feel when I was growing up, I was exposed to a lot of things that I believe were demonic and not right, and things of that nature that I wish I've never seen, you know what I mean, and never was exposed to, and things that I battled with for so long. But how much do you think this generation, Gen Z, is being attacked by the devil? And do you believe that, or do you don't believe that, or do you think some of it is a big part of it's spiritual, or do you think it's just trauma? Like where do you think?
Yeah, I think if I were to say that it isn't demonic or there isn't a spiritual element, the devil that's exactly what he wants us to say. And I think we just have to see, so each generation has strengths and weaknesses, right? You have like the baby boomers, Gen X, millennials, like a lot of, again, baby boomer, Gen X was a lot of like just blue collar, like I'm going to work hard. So what was their weakness? It was burnout, like crazy, working too much, and then going after work to the bars, right? Like that's, you don't see that as much in millennials and Gen Z. One, because, half of Gen Z isn't old enough, but like you don't see that as much where it's like, man, I'm just working really hard. The wins of Gen Z is they're super creative and they think outside the box. The devil sees that of like, they're not even in a box. They are outside of a box. So that's when you get into the really crazy spiritual stuff that like the rocks and astrology. That stuff wasn't big because a businessman working 9 to 5 in a steel mill was like, I don't have time to think about this stuff. But these people, they're using their creativity, and the devil sees that and is like, I'm gonna just throw a little stone into that creativity of like, what if? Because that's the one thing that just what if we did this instead of this? What if I saw this instead of this? And the devil throws that in there of like, what if this world is really this? What if this? So he doesn't come in the same like, I think sometimes we think the devil is like got his pitchforks and all ready. He's a businessman with the suit on. Like he comes in like, hi, my name is this, and you're like, oh, what? And he just gets you
an angel of light.
Exactly. And he just comes in and he is like smooth. I mean, anyone that's sinned before, which is all of us, have gotten tricked by him for sure.
Yes.
Like, hey, this ain't that bad. Like, it's fine. And just that's the thing that like, especially Gen Z with their creative mindset, he's attacked that, and that's why you're seeing just like not even religions. They're not in a religious group. They're in I'm my own God. I'm my own person, and I'm my own this, and like the devil has attacked that. So I think it would be, I don't know, for lack of better words, dumb to say the devil is not working, because he always is. He's always lurking in the shadows. And if we keep a shadow on it and go, there's no way it can be that, he's like, perfect, I can just keep going in this. But if we shed light on that of like, hey, this is demonic and this is a spiritual battle, then I think it at least gives us a leg up in that sense where he can be seen versus in the shadow.
Yeah. So if this is your first time here on my channel, please subscribe. This channel is geared to help you grow your faith in Jesus, to build it in Jesus. But stay tuned, because we're still going to share the tips, right, that we're going to share with you on how we could reach and help Generation Z.
Yeah.
So Sam, let's talk about the tips.
Yep.
Like, what
Yep.
tips could we help? If there's like a youth pastor on here or someone that's trying to reach his generation, what could we give them that could help them, right? Get closer to God, grow closer to God, but also equip them to
Yep.
reach his generation.
So I think we have to kind of see what is the Christian climate look like in Gen Z. So I have this grid here that kind of talks about the different generations and what they identified as in their religious sectors, I guess you could say. So just for example, let's just start with Gen X, and there's a gradual. I'll send you the picture and you can throw it up there or whatever. But you can see there's a gradual build towards a couple things. The baby boomers. 18% of them were white evangelical Protestants, claimed to be. 19% were black Protestants, and that includes Hispanic as well. So that's, 18, 19, that's, what is that, almost 40%?
Mm-hmm.
And then you got the next Generation X, 16% said that they were, white evangelical Protestants. And then 14% were black Protestants. Then millennial, 11%, 16%, and now we're at Gen Z, which 9% claim as white to be evangelical Protestants, and 12% claim to be black evangelical Protestant, and 34% are just unaffiliated at all. So there's some Catholic in there. There's some other like Christian religions and stuff like that. But the biggest number to me is the 34% that literally claim nothing. So if we go back to silent generation, that's 9%. Baby boomers 18. Gen X 25, millennial 29. So you're seeing this like gradual build to not even saying that they are religion, because those numbers again, the people that claim to be Protestant, Christian, all that, like, how can you tell if they're practicing? There's some other studies on that. I don't have those on me, but like they at least claimed something, right? Like, okay, I guess I'm a non-practicing. No. Like 34% now are just like no religion, like nothing.
Wow.
And I think the big thing we were talking before the podcast of this is my generation. So I'm like the tail end of millennial. We were just in the beginning of the phone, everyone having a phone era, social media when it was still like pretty regulated, and you're seeing this. I'm like, oh, so for me in youth ministry, we had a lot of big events. We had things like, man, draw attraction. You'd see this big blow up house, and you'd be like, man, I want to go there. Mom, drop me off there, right? And then Jesus would come, and I think, again, home of their conversation, that was not the best tactic because you are reaching them in things that they like. So as soon as you bring up a Christian value that they don't like, they're not going to follow it if you do it that way. And I honestly think that kind of like the way that youth ministry was done when I was in youth, and again, there were still great ministries, great fruit. Like I am a example of that. But I think in the big scheme of things, we kind of put out like a, hey, come for fun, and Jesus is like the addition, versus like y'all just need Jesus. Yeah. So now we got these kids who, one, don't care about anything big. They could go on YouTube and look up biggest bounce house ever, right? In 2 seconds, and they're like, oh, this thing you have out is lame. Like what? Yeah. Like the big events are okay, but it doesn't draw people like it used to. Kids nowadays want to walk into a room. They don't care about lights. They don't care about how stuff sounds. They just want to know that you care about them. Like, do you actually care about me, or do you just want me as a number? Because honestly, I didn't care if I was just a number. Like, I was just like, whatever. If you just want to get 1,000 people, that's cool with me. These kids, to even more extent than like just a normal human of like, I want you to care about me, they're like, no, for real, because I'm seeing things I shouldn't be seeing. I'm talking about things. I'm doing things I shouldn't be. Like, I just need to know that you care about me. So honestly, this may be like God, like really pulling away all the crap of like, okay, hey, you guys have like lost the image of what reaching people is. It's not just having fun. Hey, you guys need to, one, be disciples who make disciples. So they need to be learning about the Bible at a young age. If they're being brought up at 10 years old to think about suicide, we need to be talking about those things in a godly perspective. So when those thoughts do come, they're like, okay, we've talked about this. Like the church shouldn't be behind. You know what I'm saying? And I just think that for me, a tip, I think in our youth kids, and Jose, you're a youth leader for our 9th and 10th grade boys, they really, like when you talk about God and let them ask questions fly like wildfire because they're like, man, we have questions about this stuff, and if we just have fun and talk about like how not to have sex before marriage, and that's it. Like that's the surface level of what we're talking about. We're not talking about the root of like, why do I want to do these things?
Yes.
Why do I? What are the thoughts that are going through? How do I work through all of this? Is Jesus real? And if we can answer that question, kids will come.
Yeah, so Generation Z, like Sam said, they want to know you care. They want to know you truly have an interest in their life and that you validate how they feel and what they're coming in with, right? And I think that's very important as a tip. We can't sit there and try to reach this generation with surface level things. We have to let them know that we truly have a heart for people. And that's what Jesus told us. Jesus said to love, right? Those the way he loved us, love our neighbors as we love ourselves, right? They'll know you're my disciple by how you love one another. And I think this generation needs that more than anything else. They need to know you care. You can't say, oh, I care about you, but you can't come into my house.
Yeah.
You can't say, oh, I care about you, but then you don't make time for them. You can't say you care about them and then you let them down and now they lose trust when they're trying to find someone they can finally trust for the first time to help them what they're going through.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's a great tip. Is there any other tip you have, or is that it?
That's that. I feel like that is like the root, because there's a lot of other tips like how do you keep them in the door. All that stuff is like good additional tips, but the main one is we have to answer that question: who is Jesus? Is he real? And then hit to those hard points that are already being taught. The church needs to be ahead of the curve versus reacting to, oh crap, our kids already know about this stuff, so we have to like avert them. It's more like, how about we just teach them the right way before the world does?
Yeah,
so I think that's the core. And there's a bunch of little things that you can add on, but that's really the core of it.
Yeah, and if you're a Gen Z watching this video, hit the like button, but also put in a comment something that you're looking for when you're trying to seek God. If you're trying to go to a church, or if you've been to a youth group before and anything that was negative, like, man, this really threw me off, put in the comments. It's going to help me. It's going to help Pastor Sam here, but we'll like to hear from you, right? Did we hit some good points? Is that how you really feel? Or is there something else that we missed? And we'll love to hear it from you. But like I said, hit the like button as this goes out to more people and subscribe to this channel. Be blessed.